أيوة. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن سار سبيله إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. So as we continue discussing the book Bulugh al-Maram by Hafidh Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani rahimahullah, and we're still discussing the bab of Kitab al-Buyu. So you have mentioned regarding different type of transactions or business matters that Islam does not allow or permits. So he's mentioned a hadith that relates to these type of transactions or business practices that Islam does not allow. So today, inshallah, we'll try to cover some of those transactions based upon some of the hadith that have been mentioned here. So we'll read through the hadith, and we'll read through the two hadith of today, and then have the discussion around the hadith. Tafaddal.
Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. We start this lesson on hadith 672, narrated Jabir bin Abdullah radiyallahu an. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam forbade al-muhaqata wal-muzabana wal-mukhabara, and also forbade al-thunya unless it was explicit, a known amount. Reported by Al-Khamsa, excluding Ibn Majah. At-Tirmidhi also graded it Sahih, authentic. Hadith 673, narrated Anas radiallahu an. Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam forbade al-muhaqala wal-mukhadara wal-mulamasa wal-munabadha wal-muzabana. Reported by Al-Bukhari.
So these are the two hadith that I mentioned regarding of these type of transaction that Islam does not permit and allows, where he mentioned the hadith of Jabir ibn Abdullah radiyallahu anhu, and the Nabi alayhi salam naha an muhaqala. So he mentioned regarding of certain transactions that are said to be forbidden. He mentioned muhaqala, which is one to be discussed, muzabana, which is the second, mukhabara, which is the third, wa an thunya, being the fourth, illa an tu'lan. Then he mentioned rawahu al-khamsa illa Ibn Majah wa sahahu at-Tirmidhi. So, and the second hadith is mentioned that relates to the same topic, and Anas radiyallahu anhu قال نهى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم عن محاقلة والمخاضرة والملامسة والمنابذة والمزابنة. رواه Bukhari. So this is the hadith, are the two hadith that are mentioned here and to be covered in this session. So the first of those things to be covered regarding concerning Jabir and Anas have been covered before previously regarding matters pertaining to these two as-sahabi radiyallahu anhuma. Then as for the second matter, it relates to regarding concerning that the takhrij of the hadith. The second matter is relates to a takhrij of the hadith. So as mentioned here, he mentioned rawahu khamsa, so as which will include Abu Dawud, Tirmidhi, Nasahi, Ibn Majah, and Ahmed. Then I mentioned illa Ibn Majah, so with the exclusion of Ibn Majah. So that will leave regarding concerning that it would mean 4 of those 5 books, and with the exception of Ibn Majah, they mentioned Sahahu at-Tirmidhi, at Imam at-Tirmidhi rahimahullah, or the hadith to be authentic. As for what is mentioned here by Sheikh Halak, or Sheikh Mahir in his checking of the book of Bulugh al-Maram, when he mentioned this hadith of Jabir ibn Abdullah, that he states regarding concerning number 4 in his footnotes and Sahih, Akhrajahu Ahmed, the hadith is narrated by Ahmed or collected by Ahmed, Abu Dawud, Tirmidhi, Nasa'i, Abu Ya'la, Ibn Jarud, Ibn Hibban, Bayhaqi. So these are those sources that mentioned the hadith. So again, he mentioned the hadith can be found with Ahmed in his Musnad, Abu Dawud, At-Tirmidhi, Nasa'i, Abu Ya'la, Ibn Jarud, Ibn Hibban, and also Bayhaqi. All these have collected this hadith. Then he mentioned the hadith is Sahih, that he mentioned the hadith is as-Sahih. So regarding concerning this hadith, that it is found in those books of hadith, and it mentioned that At-Tirmidhi rahimahullah, when he mentioned هذا hadith Hasanun Sahih, that At-Tirmidhi rahimahullah, he mentioned هذا hadithun Hasanun Sahih, the hadith is Hasanun Sahih. Then he mentioned قال في إلل الكبير. So At-Tirmidhi rahimahullah, he has a book also called Al-Ilal al-Kabir, where he mentioned this hadith concerning Sa'altu Muhammad, yani Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah. So at-Tirmidhi, one of the students of Imam Bukhari rahimahullah, and they find that he have asked many questions regarding hadith. Imam at-Tirmidhi rahimahullah asking Bukhari question relating to hadith. So of those questions that he posed to Imam Bukhari rahimahullah regarding the mention and had the hadith that he asked Imam Bukhari rahimahullah on this particular hadith that have been mentioned. فقال لم يعرفه من حديث سفيان ابن حسين عن يونس بن عبيد عن عطاء وقال لا يعرف ليونس ابن عبيد سماها عن عطاء ابن أبي رباح. So that's concerned that Imam Bukhari rahimahullah mentioned that regarding this hadith, and he mentioned that the hadith of Jabir also, it have other narration that goes back to the hadith of Anas that is in Bukhari, and also of Abu Hurairah, who have narrated hadith that are similar without mentioning some of those narrations mentioned the exception. Then I mentioned concerning the second hadith, regarding concerning hadith that is mentioned by Imam Bukhari rahimahullah. So Imam Bukhari rahimahullah, that you have mentioned this the second hadith, that is the hadith of Anas bin Malik. So the hadith of Anas that have been mentioned by Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah. So these two hadith are considered to be so the second hadith of Anas bin Malik, that also collected by Imam Bukhari rahimahullah in Kitab al-Buyu. So as for that hadith, that they are said to be authentic, the hadith is said to be authentic. Then as for what is mentioned regarding next would be the third, regarding explaining concerning the alfaz, the wording of the hadith. So explaining certain wordings that are mentioned in these two hadith. So you have certain wording that requires some explanation as to what is intended or what is understood. So I mentioned the first of those wordings that requires some explanation, where the Prophet would mention nahaan muhalaqa. So I mentioned muhaqala or muhaqala. So the word is muhaqala that have been mentioned here regarding concerning that, which mentioned concerning al-haql, which is concerning al-field. So from the word also of the field, go back to a field or a farm, a place of, so a field or a farm, regarding farming and crops. So they mentioned regarding concerning to know as for what now is intended by this. So what is meant by this, the word al-asl, it goes back to farming or to a farm or a field, or then it mentioned here regarding as to what is said is the meaning of this word. So they mentioned that al-bay' al-handala bisumbiliha, where it concerned the sale of handala bisumbiliha, that the sale of wheat still, so the sale of wheat that is still on the vine, that is so the sale of wheat that is still growing. So it's the sale of wheat while it is still growing. Bihandala safia, where it is being sold with another form of wheat, but that wheat is one which is already ripe and has been picked. So concerning, so this is concerning that is wheat being sold, the wheat that is still growing, being sold and still on the vine or the tree, that is being sold with being sold by wheat that is already ready and prepared. So that's concerning this transaction, where it is called muha qala. Then that's concerning the explanation given by Abi Ubaid al-Qasim ibn Salam. So this is the explanation that is given by Abi Ubaid al-Qasim ibn Salam rahimahullah ta'ala. So that's concerning of those words that are mentioned here regarding concerning what is this transaction. Some mention regarding al-bay al-bur, where the person selling concerning of wheat fi sumbali, that is being still sold while it is in growth, while it's still on the vine, still growing, or on still being grown on the tree, bibur al-safi, which is from al-bur, which is already ready to go. So that's concerning what is meant or intended by this. That also of the ulama who have mentioned regarding muha qala, as to what is meant by this, qara al-ard bi ba'd ma tumbit, where the person that he would rent out a piece of land for so the person renting out a piece of land for some of that which is where it is somewhat ready, which is it is proper for crops. So they mentioned regarding, so that's concerning what they said regarding this meaning. As for the second word that is mentioned here regarding concerning muzabana, so muzabana is the next word that is mentioned regarding what is intended and meant by this. So fanzubun, which concerning adaf al-shadid, so it is something pushing something back with shidda, so pushing something firmly. Then this is what is intended linguistically. But as for what is intended shar'an, or what is mentioned or intended here, this type of business transaction, where they mention this transaction that where they mention here, as Sheikh Abdullah Fawzani mentioned, and يبيع الرجل ثمر آحته إن كان نخلا بثمر خيل. Or they mentioned that إن كان عنبا بزبيب قيلا. So the person selling something which is grapes that are still growing, so grapes, so fit grapes with grape which is dry. So the person concerning that fresh grapes with dry grapes. So the person the selling of fresh grapes with dry grapes. So this concerning this action, or as they mentioned regarding concerning that the person buying of fruits that's still in on the farm with that which is already picked, that's already been picked and ready. So that's concerning this type of transaction, a person selling a form of item or product or produce that's already still being grown from that which is already ready and prepared. So that's concerning our grapes that are somewhat fresh with grapes that are dried and already so been dried out. That's concerning what is mentioned regarding this type of transaction. Then I mentioned, so that's concerning of those who have explanation regarding this matter. Then the next matter they discuss regarding mukhabara. So of those words that are mentioned in the hadith, there are some of the hadith, on these hadith, mukhabara. So as for mukhabara that they mentioned regarding that, regarding concern is ma'khud bin khibar, where concerning that wahiyya al-ard al-layin, where the land is somewhat fertile, the land is somewhat fertile, muqabil zar, where it is ready for to be farmed, is ready to be farmed. So that's concerning what is meant by mukhabara. So where they mention regarding concerning that, so this concerning this and what is meant by this. As for what is intended here, that what is intended murad huna, it means concerning zar ard bijuz mimma yakhruj minha. So the person like cultivating a portion of the land. So the land being farmed, but then the owner of the land stipulating that he's get a certain portion that is more, maybe the portion that is more, that what he receive should be from the section of the land that is more fertile. So the land which is there, and the landowner or one person asking for them to receive their share from the portion of the land that would be cultivated, but their share would be taken from the portion of the land that is more fertile, the portion of the land that is more fertile, or from a specific area of the land. So that's concerning this act concerning mukhabara. So that's concerning where the person is somewhat that he is seeking to gain a requesting or stipulating that what he receive from the land is from a particular section of the land, even though and not just the every section or every just not from anywhere, but from a specific section of the land, because of it being maybe more fertile or other reasons for him to seek of this. So it leaves concern the other person getting something which is unknown. So that's concerned the situation that a person receiving concerning something which is unknown regarding what will be produced from that section. Then I mention again one of those words concerning thunya. So that's concerning what is they mention at thunya as being of those acts that are also mentioned. So thunya that is mentioned, that it is mentioned regarding concerning that this is concerning that the person buying something, and yubi'a shay, the person purchasing or selling of something, ويستثنى منه شيء غير معلوم, the person is selling something, but then he's making a stipulation regarding that he wished to receive something which is unknown, but he hasn't specified what is for him to receive back. So for example, that that the person mentioned, that for example mentioned that I will sell you this particular kitab or these sets of books or these trees or these amount or these sheeps. So the person said, I will sell you these amount of books or these trees or these livestock. They mention وَنَحُ إِلَّا بِبَعْض, except with a certain section, but it's unknown how much but he didn't specify as to what is exempt. So he's exempt in certain things, but not specifying what is exempt from what he's selling. I'll sell you these books, except for some. But what is that actually some? that will be that is exempted, it is unknown. So that's concerning that type of transaction where something which is majhul, that is being mentioned, something which is majhul, something which is unknown, unspecified, it is being introduced into the transaction. Then I mentioned illa and tu'lan regarding concerning that goes back to, and this goes back concerning athunya. So I mentioned except without this exception. So without this exception, so that this thing needs to be known. So mention that with the sake of thuna or thunya, where that this exception is being made, it should be explicit and be cleared up and to be clarified. So that's concerning that transaction. The other that is mentioned mukhadara. So the other that is mentioned mukhadara. As for what is meant by al-bay al-mukhadara, which is they mentioned concerning an yabi' al-thimar that are khadran qabla an yabdu salahuha, that something being sold, that a product being sold or a crop being sold before it is fit enough to be sold. So there's something which is green and not yet fit to be sold. So it's selling something that should not be green, so that unfit to be sold. So it's concerning what is mentioned regarding this type of transaction, where others have mentioned regarding that al-mukhadara, yabi' al-thimar, selling of produce, qabla an tut'am, before it is something that is ready to be eaten. So there's something being sold before it is ready to be or fit enough to be eaten or to be consumed. Then I mention of those things that I mentioned, the hadith of Anas, mulamasa. So the hadith of Anas mentioned mulamasa. So al-mulamasa, from the words al-lams, which is something to be touched. So something to be touched, that is concerning al-lams. So what is meant by this regarding concerning this concern that that where a person that they mention concerning that lams al-rajul al-thawb al-akhir, where concerned a person concerning that mujarrad al-lams, where the person will buy something just by touching of it, then that if the person does so, then he has to buy it. So by way of touching it, but without the person looking at the matter carefully and properly, by the fact that you touched it, then you have to take it and accept it. So that's concerning what is meant by this. So they mention the fact the person of thawb, I mentioned that إذا لمست, so the person said إذا لمست, if you thawbi, if you touch this garment of mine or this material of mine, وَلَمَسَتْ ثَوْبَكَ, and I also, and you touch my thawb and I touch your thawb, mention فَقَدْ وَجَبَتْ الْبَيْء, then it is a must that we have to go through with a transaction. So the person touching of something, so the fact that you have touched it and you have touched his garment and he has touched yours, then it becomes compulsory that you have to now exchange or go through with a transaction regarding this item with a person. So with this, it becomes with a person not per se look or investigating the matter carefully regarding that item. So the person not being able to check up thoroughly on that item. So the fact that you have touched it, then you have to accept it and to buy this. So that's concerning what is mentioned by mulamasa. Then the next one, then the other that is mentioned, hadith of Anas mentioned munabadha. So munabadha that they mention here regarding concerning that with this, concerning that nabadat kullu wahid min al-mutaba'iin, where both buyer and seller that they would throw their garments to each other. So each would throw the garment to each other, and whatever garment is received, then it has to be bought. Whatever is flinged at other person, then it has to be bought. So the person throw at you and you throw at him, then each have to buy what is thrown at them or thrown at them. So that's concerning this type of transaction. So this is what is meant by this type of transaction. If the person didn't get to again look to investigate to that garment properly or that product properly, he still has to accept it. The fact that it's been thrown at him and he received it, he caught it, then the person has to pay for it. Without per se the person is something that he exactly want, then or is able to examine it, then that is not done. So it's a form of the person buying something which is for him unknown, and it is unknown and unclear as to what he's receiving. So that's concerning those wordings that are mentioned regarding this type of transaction. So it mentioned regarding that these transactions were transactions that used to occur in Jahiliyyah. So these are transactions that occurred in Jahiliyyah. So based upon this concerning that as the Sheikh Abdullah Fawzan Hafidullah, he mentioned, في هذا حديثان سبع صور من صور معاملات الجاهلية. So it mentioned with both those two hadith, of the hadith of Jabir and Abdullah and the second hadith of Anas bin Malik, that both mention over 7 type of business transaction that used to occur in the time of Jahiliyyah, where Islam came and forbid them continuing. Islam came to forbid the continuation of these type of transaction. So they mention here regarding concern that these, so mention these transaction, these 7 transaction. So it mentioned concerning muhaqala being 1, muzabana being 2, mukhabara being 3, al-thuna or thunya being the 4th. Then also it mentioned mukhadara being the 5th, mulamasa being the 6th, and also munabatha being the 7th. So these are the 7 transactions that in Jahiliyyah it was a practice that it would transaction or a practice that was prevalent or carried out then. Then when Islam came, it discontinued these transactions based upon the premise that these things that it have a lot of the person buying thing which is majhul, and so the person buying something which is somewhat unclear as to what they're getting because they're unable to examine the thing properly. So based upon this, of a level of being unfair to one party, so Islam came and to eradicate this type of transaction. So he mentioned regarding concerning that with Islam, فذكر العلماء العلماء الفقه والحديث that جاء الإسلام that to discontinue to أبطلها. Islam came to eradicate this type of transaction. Why? They mention لأنها مبنية على الغرر والجهالة. So it's based upon things of the person of things of a form of deception based upon jihala, of unfairness to one side or to one based upon these matters. So it mentioned regarding of this, and these type of transactions lead to a lot of can lead to a lot of quarrels and dispute between the parties because one side is not accepting this transaction by way of that they are pleased with it. So based upon this, they are considered to be forbidden. Then he mentioned concerning that as for this act that they consider to be that this the hadith, it shows regarding, or both hadith, it shows regarding muhaqala. So muhaqala is considered to be something which is forbidden. So they consider to be something which is forbidden in Islam regarding this type of transaction. A person that is buying some, for example, wheat that is growing for wheat already picked. So there's a distinction between both. Right? So the one that is still growing, it may not grow proper. Something may occur where it is destroyed, or it did not per se ended well regarding that product or that crop. So because of those things possibility, then it is not allowed. And also because it's not yet properly fit. So overall dimension is something which is, and also it's majhul, where the person is unclear as to what will be the final product. So the final crop, as to what the person may receive, is unknown. So with this, it becomes something which is haram. So because of one, jahala, getting something which is clear is unknown as what will be the final product, and also riba. So also that buying the same thing, one which is good, both two the same thing, then also that it falls into a riba, could fall into a riba. So that's concerning of the reason why this is of why that's considered to be haram regarding of these type of some of these transaction. Then also I mentioned 5th regarding hadith, dalil ala nahi anan, also concerned the second which is muzabana. So muzabana as being something which is forbidden. So muzabana also of those things which is this type of business transaction also considered to be forbidden. Also considered or classed or ruled as forbidden, which is being something which is known with something which is unknown from the same kind. So being also the person doing a transaction with something which is known, with something which is unknown, but from the same type. So that's concerning. So even though they may be similar in certain case to certain stance, to certain of being of the same kind, but they're different because of other factors. So one may be, so I mentioned that one may be fresh dates, with that one may be concerning with grape which is fresh, and grapes that's already dried grapes. So even though the same grapes, but one which is dried and one which is fresh. So a difference between them. So there's tafadul, that is somewhat a difference between both. So that's concerning of those reasons why they're considered to be, we could again fall into matters regarding a riba, could fall into the elements of riba. Then also he mentioned regarding concerning the second, another concerning mukhabara. So mukhabara, this type of transaction where regarding concerning mukhabara, where again concerned that to know that a person specifying something, that they want something which is specific from that thing. So they want a particular thing, something specific from that entirely, from that thing entirely, from the entire thing. Then that is somewhat maybe could be unfair to one party, where the person may be choosing from that part, that part that would be to his advantage, and the other person will then have to deal with the part that is not suitable, and he has to deal with those things. So it shows the person that is, so it is a nahi due to jahala and also gharar. So these things are in play regarding these things. So things of uncertainty, unknowns, and also the person being somewhat deceived regarding certain things. So those are of the reason why concerning this matter concerning mukhabara is said to be haram, are not allowed. Then he mentioned regarding concerning, as for what he mentioned regarding the other type of transactions, that also the same thing applies. So regarding concerning thunya, as mentioned regarding the person, now he's making an exception, where something that he's making an exception to a transaction, but that thing is unknown, it is unclear. So the person is making an exception, I will sell you these things, except a portion of these things. So what portion is not this? What is this portion that is not being sold? So that portion need to be clearly identified and known as to what exactly the person is receiving, not buying something with an exception that you may not receive some, but that some is unknown. So that's concerning because of that or because of that making this unknown again, with making an exception which is unknown, then becomes problematic, becomes something which becomes maybe unfair for the person who's the buyer. Then I mentioned regarding concerning mukhadara, as for mukhadara, where the person buying something which is not ripe with something which is ripe from the same type of product. So something which is ripe with the same product which is unripe, then with this concern that are not suitable to be eaten, then also with this it goes into that a form of again concerning that being considered unfair to one party. So there's a level of being unfair and unjust to one party, and also that al-khatar, that also could lead to problems, so that also why that act is considered to be forbidden. And also malamasa, also it is munabadha. So mulamasa wa munabadha, that they are considered because of again jahala, where the person a transaction. So by you just touching or being thrown at you, then you have to accept that item and to pay for that item. It may not be exactly what you want. So based upon that, it is not a valid business transaction. So all of these are considered to be not valid business transaction being carried out. So the Sharia all of these to be haram regarding concern that these transactions are not considered to be valid transaction because of the level of jahala that is common with most, and being also unfair to one party over the other. So with that, inshallah, that these are the ones that are covered regarding this particular hadith, regarding concerning all these two hadith, regarding the hadith of Jabir, where the Prophet ﷺ forbade certain type of transaction, that it shows also that, and also the hadith of Anas bin Malik, also again mentioning some other mention also things that are said to be transactions that are not allowed. So these are things that Islam, that it showed that Islam, it came to rectify things regarding, even rectify things concerning mu'amalat. So regarding concerning that, Islam came to rectify regarding anything that have concerning that where it may be problematic or considered to be unfair or unjust to one side over another, or biased towards one side over the other regarding business transaction, then these things are not allowed. So when a person buying something with, there's a sense of jahala, sense of with a person not knowing exactly what he's receiving, because he was unable to examine the product carefully and to make a proper choice or decision, then these type of transactions are considered to be invalid and forbidden. So those are these 7 transactions that are held to be forbidden in Islam. But yes, they were prevalent or done before Islam, and then Islam came and eradicated these transactions. So it shows regarding concerning to know that Islam is about concerning the masala of the nas, masali and nas, regarding how to bring about benefit for the people in general, and also things that are said to be unfair and unjust to stamp out those things. So also regarding concerning business transaction, also that which is those things that are said to be fair and based upon and just, then these are the ones that Islam upholds. With this, inshallah ta'ala, will be the discussion as mentioned here regarding these two hadith, regarding of those transactions that are transactions that are said to be haram. So this also a falling in line, these hadith of Jabir and Anas is falling in line regarding of those things they mentioned that ma nuhi anhu, concerning transaction that Islam owes to be forbidden. So of transaction that Islam owes to be forbidden are these transactions that are mentioned here regarding, as mentioned, muhaqala, muzabana, mukhabara, thunya. Then he mentioned also mukhadara and also mulamasa, and then he mentioned also munabadha. All these are transactions that are said to be not allowed because of the factor that we have mentioned that that relates to these type of transaction. So based upon this, they are not allowed. So all of these are said to be haram as transactions. So that's inshallah ta'ala. Then with this inshallah ta'ala, then it is from this a conclusion that these transactions are said to be haram and forbidden because of, as mentioned regarding concerning that one, jahala, of things of uncertainty or unknown, things that are unknown, unclear, gharar, that things regarding concerning things being of deception, and also يؤدي إلى نزاع والاختلاف, and also they can lead to severe dispute between the buyer and the seller. So these are those of the factors why these things are said to be haram, where Islam tries to keep unity and also for the people to have good relation between themselves, and not things that will bring about these type of niza and unfair and differences that may lead to quarrel between even buyer and seller. With that, inshallah ta'ala, we'll end this discussion and what is mentioned in these 2 hadith, and inshallah ta'ala that will continue regarding the other hadith that I mentioned regarding other transactions that are said to be forbidden. وبالله تعالى توفيق وهذا السبيل والآخر والحمد لله.